Be seated, please. Before I begin my sermon proper, I want to welcome and thank all the Calvary Place staff and parents. Would you all hold up your hands so everybody knows who you are? You all may not, some of you may not know. Yay! Many of us right in this room were part of the founding of your wonderful school, and my granddaughter Miriam was a baby there, and it kept me working here because I could go down and be with her. And I know what this means to so many parents to have, and our staff is so fine. It's got all the highest ratings in the city for child care. So it's a great honor to have you all with us, and it's a joy to be part of a church that opens its doors all week long. Thank you. For as long as I can remember, I have loved Easter egg hunts. I can still feel the thrill of running outside on Easter morning with an empty Easter basket, spotting a bright red or yellow egg in the green grass, another one in an azalea bush, one in a low tree crook, others nestled under potted plants. I never wanted the Easter egg hunt to end. Finding sea glass in Maine has become like hunting for Easter eggs. And you all have heard more than you need to know about finding sea glass. Every time I spot a piece of that bright glass shimmering up through the rocks, it's like Easter morning all over again. Summer in Maine is a perpetual Easter egg hunt. So imagine my delight when I read that during the great 50 days of Easter, Calvary was going to have an Easter sermon series called The Hope Effect. Each Sunday, I learned, the clergy would explore the many faces of hopefulness, hoping that they would inspire us to start a new journey with Christ. It sounded like a theological Easter egg hunt to me. And that is what, these 5 weeks have been. Each week, a bit of new life, new color, and meaning go into my Easter basket of hope. First, courage, then grace, then joy, last week, freedom. All of these familiar words have come to life in new ways for me. Please excuse me. Today, it is my turn to add one last egg to the basket, faith, which is an interesting assignment for someone like me, who is often more beset with worry, anxiety, and fear than I like to admit. Just ask Frank what it's like to fly with me through bumpy weather, or even worse, bounce and careen over choppy seas in Maine. It is not a pretty picture. In search of fresh insight from others on faith, I turn to some of my favorite theologians of all ages. First, the late, great William Sloane Coffin, the vibrant, brilliant pastor, activist, and chaplain who made a memorable visit to here to Calvary years ago. He spoke in here on Sunday and at the Lenten preaching series, and the Sunday I was the deacon. I was so unnerved by the fact that he was sitting there that I poured most of the wine all over the altar. I was just completely undone. I love the recklessness of faith, he wrote. First you leap, then you grow wings. And there is nothing anti-intellectual in the leap of faith. For faith is not believing without proof, but trusting without reservation. Faith is no substitute for thinking. On the contrary, it is what makes good thinking possible. He continues, certainly Peter, Andrew, James, and John, in deciding to follow Jesus, received more to think about than if they had stayed at home. And so it is with all of us. If we give our lives to Christ, if we leave the familiar territory and take that leap of faith, what we receive in return fills our minds altogether as much as it fills our hearts. After all, he famously quipped, Christ came to take away our sins, not our minds. Well, that's good, I thought, since I often wonder if my mind doesn't interfere with my faith, such as it is. Take today's gospel reading from John, where Jesus tells his disciples, oh, this is a first. I've never been coughed so much. Where's the water?
Underneath.
Oh, God is so good. Oh, me of little faith. I didn't know it was here. Oh, I'm so sorry. Where was I? Jesus tells his disciples that they are going to his Father, and they are not to worry or be afraid. I want to say, excuse me, Jesus, that's fine for you to say, but you're Jesus. Of course they're afraid. And thank heavens for Thomas, who had the courage to ask questions. Thank heavens, too, for scholars who have spent their lifetimes dedicated to grappling with such questions. Because they tell me that when Jesus says, peace I leave with you, he is not dismissing their fears. They're understandable. Shalom, peace, does not mean peace of mind merely, but wholeness, well-being in the midst of anxiety and fear. Now that I understand. That kind of peace is a priceless, invaluable gift. As for the puzzling statement that the disciples should be glad, rejoice that he's going to the Father, which is a statement I have never understood, I read a commentary this week that shed new light on that for me. The church is not a memorial society looking back in admiration for the earthly Jesus who once lived, regretting that he is no longer with us. John's view is that it is better for the earthly Jesus who have departed, so that the Spirit of Christ will be released through his church then and now. That's what I feel Calvary has become, a church that is alive with the Spirit of Christ. It isn't a memorial society, but a church, a real church, alive with the Spirit of God. Next, I consulted with my friend John Sewell, the rector of St. John's Church here in Memphis, who more than once has cleared tangled thoughts of biblical cobwebs from my mind. John has the knack of honoring serious subjects by holding them very lightly, turning them like a kaleidoscope to catch new images. I shouldn't have been surprised when, immediately responding to my email question, I asked him this question: what is your definition of faith? And I immediately got the following reply. You may have to come read this. Faith, the sister of love and hope, travels with their first cousin, Grace, and also in the company of that scamp, doubt. Doubt is the life of the party every time, so let us be clear. Doubt is not the opposite of faith. They are actually rather fond of each other. No, the opposite of doubt is certainty. That pompous twit would rearrange a 2-car funeral procession. If it's worth having, certainty has it already, and he can barely stand the sight of doubt. Meanwhile, Faith, who has a high tolerance for ambiguity, moves on her way, often joined by her sisters. Grace shows up regularly with refreshments for the journey. Having staked all that matters on the worthiness of God, Faith moves into the future toward God, remarkably serene. Oh, she has her moments. Hope is prone to wander off from time to time, which is anxiety-producing for Faith. Fortunately, love, ever loyal, is with her always, as well as her best buddy, gratitude. When you preach Sunday, John says, remind those good people that faith grows stronger with exercise, and is most sturdy when her sisters' love and hope support her. And don't forget Grace. Where would any of us be if Grace didn't introduce us to the most interesting people in the most unusual places? You would almost think it was planned. Some think so. Others, just live by faith. Surely, I thought, John Sewell is a direct descendant of the author of Revelation, another John who is given to similar visions of faith, love, and hope. Revelation is one of the most beautiful, hopeful, poetic texts in the entire Bible, worthy of careful reading and study, and not worthy of plucking out of context the frightening portions. Today's portion describes the author's vision of a holy city, Jerusalem, descending out of heaven, a city that is a place of life, healing, and hope. Isn't it interesting that our Bible begins in a garden and ends in a city? An urban, not a rural setting, a city with all its complexities, anxieties, and challenges, now is the model for life with God. This city is flooded with perpetual light. A river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flows through it. Its gates are always open. It is a place of safety and inclusion, a beacon of hope, making God's visible in downtown Memphis. This sounds like a church I know, at the corner of 2nd and Adams. After William Sloane Coffin's thoughtfulness and John Sewell's imaginings, I was ready for a break. So I turned to my youngest theologian, my 11-year-old grandson, Frazier. I picked him up after school Thursday, and knowing that I had a heavy question to lay on him, I asked casually, "You want to go to Jerry's Snow Cone?" Off we went. The asphalt lot around this famous emporium was crowded and hot, not the right place for me to pop the question I'd been waiting to ask him. So it wasn't until we got back in the car with him gobbling up his wedding cake supreme and me spooning in my bright green lemon lime snow cone that I was able to tell him that I needed a little help with my sermon for Sunday. He rolled his eyes and sighed, but I plunged on. "Frazier," I asked, "what does the word faith mean to you?" He was quiet for so long that I wondered if he was going to answer me at all. But then he said, "Believing in something you can't see." Believing in something you can't see. I pressed on. "Like God and Jesus?" "Yes." So I risked one more. "What does it mean to believe that?" This time he didn't hesitate. "Well, you act like it. You act differently." "Do you know someone you think has that kind of faith and acts like it?" "Oh, yeah." Not you, Gigi. My teacher, Mr. Humphreys." "Why?" "Because Mr. Humphreys really cares about us. You can tell that he does." Faith is believing in something you cannot see and acting like it by caring for other people. That was all I needed to know for now or maybe forever. So we drove home in the late afternoon sunshine talking about baseball. Amen.